Hey gang, KR King here, helping you homebrew your own D&D campaign. And today is a special late edition for my channel. I'm one day late. I had the Thanksgiving holiday this weekend and I was hosting for my family, so I was very busy. But it did get me thinking about feasts and using them in a homebrewed campaign because feasts are a very common feature of all civilizations. And when we think of the medieval style that is very typical for D&D, it's not essential because, again, as we can see with Thanksgiving, they occur today. But these were a common feature, and they served a variety of purposes that you can use in your campaign, not just to give it flavor, but to forward storylines, adventure hooks, role-playing, the interaction of your players in your world. All right, so what I'm going to think of in, each of these feasts that I'm going to talk about are some basic criteria, which is why are we gathering for this feast? Who is invited and who's not invited? What are potential conflicts that can arise among the celebrants that are at the feast or those that weren't invited? What is the etiquette that people, i.e. your player characters who attend the feast, must observe? And of course, you have ceremonies associated with feasts. And I'll just start with the Thanksgiving model, just because that's the one I just was involved with. This is giving thanks, and usually it's a harvest festival. It started in the United States based on the Pilgrims. It actually wasn't celebrated officially until the 1860s during the Civil War. But other festivals all through Europe and Asia and everywhere in terms of the bounty of the earth, giving them the sustenance to continue to live. And then this translates into giving thanks in general, for your health, for your family, for your mental situation, whatever it is, people gather to give thanks. And typically this is a family gathering, but Thanksgiving also, you can have other people, someone whose family's not around. If you're in a city with a bunch of people that their families are back home, they will gather to give thanks, which is a very interesting thing. You can have one of these harvest festivals if they occur at a specific time. Whoever happens to be in an area where they observe this back home, they may observe this, in the wild, as it were. And also, this is a secular festival, unique in many ways because there are, you don't go to church or synagogue or, the temple or whatever it is. It's not associated with that. It's purely secular. Everyone generally in the United States, at least, I don't know about other countries, can gather together. And this makes the guest list of who's invited or not invited different than other festivals. Then you get into the potential conflicts. And of course, as we know, when you have family gatherings with multi-generations, you have classic, the crazy uncle and his idiotic views, the sullen teenagers who don't want to be there, the fighting, siblings or parent siblings, generational conflicts. These can occur and be exacerbated at Thanksgiving because people are expected to show, or if they don't, this can cause conflict. And then the etiquette at a Thanksgiving celebration, when I was growing up, we dressed up just generally more so for Thanksgiving or certainly Easter or Christmas. Today, it's not nearly as rigid in terms of that. I've been at other people's Thanksgiving things, or if you're gathering with your friends. But a lot of times people will dress up. And the etiquette, too, is starting arguments, talking about politics or religion at a Thanksgiving party can be a no-no. And you need to learn that you don't start disputations. This is why the crazy relative who wants to argue politics is such a cliche, because the etiquette at this sort of celebration is not to do this. So if your players are interacting in your world, a harvest festival is really good because it's not just in a city or town with a standard humanoids, but this can be anywhere. Orcs may have such a festival, hobgoblins. You could have one with giants. You could have all sorts of, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the different races that now are, if they're sentient races that the player characters can be part of, then you could be part of a festival with these people or a feast. And celebrating this harvest concept because everyone's got to eat, everyone's got to live. And again, it's associated now in D&D. This might be a little more in terms of the gods, they're active gods about with those that are associated with the harvest or nature or whatever. But it is a chance in terms of having this festival. The players are in a community and they're having a harvest festival. It has an open, whoever happens to be there is invited. And then what are the disputes? You may have this group let's say you have lizard folk, and the players are happen to be in the swamp, and they're having a harvest festival to the marsh and the sea and the whatever. They're invited. Okay, the players are there. And first of all, they're outsiders, right? So you have these outsiders there, which can cause some disputes. Now you may have two groups of the lizard folk in this community that are opposed to one another. Well, usually they're not together, but at a feast, it brings people together who could potentially have a conflict. The players can be involved in this if they came in on one side, and the group uses this as an opportunity, because here's another thing about a feast. Everyone is coming together, and if someone wants to pull some stunt or make a play for the town or whatever, they've got everyone right there. And the other thing is, those that are not invited to the feast, they know that everyone who they're probably mad at because they weren't invited or they're the enemy, they know that they are gathered all together in this one spot, and it makes it an opportune time for an attack. So these ceremonies with Thanksgiving are bringing out the turkey or the goose or whatever it is that you usually serve, the carving of the turkey, the whole process. What time do you eat Thanksgiving? We have related things like football games and whatnot. There may be others in other cultures. And of course, we have the wedding feast. After a wedding, whoever's putting it on holds a large feast for all those that were invited to attend. The attendance list here is critical because you have family members and relatives, but oftentimes who's invited and who's not is a big deal. Now, conventional marriages in my world of sort of middle-class America, you can only invite so many people because you can't afford it, right? Rich types, kings and queens, if we're looking at a D&D world, or powerful figures might have 1,000 people at a wedding, right? But they're still going to exclude people. There's still going to be those that are on the outs, the rival princes, or another municipality, another kingdom. But it's very important to invite another kingdom to a daughter's wedding, certainly sometime, or son's wedding, or whoever it is, because sometimes this is a joining up with kingdoms. And this is where conflicts can arise, because you may have members, let's say, of another royal family that was irritated by this union. All they want to do is stop this marriage. This is why in a D&D world, a wedding feast is often an opportunity for trouble. And I'm not going to do any spoilers, but those of you that have seen Game of Thrones know exactly what I'm talking about. This is something where in the traditional wedding with the groomsmen and everything, you had two houses come together, and you had groomsmen protecting both the groom and the bride or whatever, because up until that moment when they were wedded in wedded bliss, there was potential for conflict. And here again, when you have a wedding, there is etiquette to be observed. What you wear, this is where you should dress up. If you show up ill-dressed at a wedding, that shows disrespect. Not a good idea. Again, starting arguments, starting disputations. This is where all those sort of things are supposed to be laid aside. We're supposed to be celebrating this feast to celebrate this couple that is getting married. But you can find people, when you see someone that purposely breaks the etiquette of a wedding, they want to disrupt it, whatever. And again, this is where the players can be involved. They can be asked to attend the wedding and also asked to keep order, classic task. And as I mentioned with the Game of Thrones situation, there were people that were invited to harvest feasts, wedding feasts, with the sole purpose, an enemy. This is a peace thing, but instead they were going to get them all together and attack them. And this is something you can use in D&D to great advantage. The players may know about this. The people that are holding the feast say, no, we don't believe it. So the players are the only ones that know that they're going to be attacked. Maybe they don't know who of the guests is the one, so they're on edge. Then they're going to launch this, and the players get to stop the attack, the slaughter, whatever. It's a great adventure hook. Now, at a wedding feast, the rituals usually occur before the wedding itself, at least in terms of a reception type thing. But there are rituals. There are toasts that are delivered at a wedding feast. And these toasts, the classic groomsman that makes some embarrassing toast or something. We see commercials and whatnot. But certainly in a D&D setting, if someone is there to disrupt this wedding, they get up to make a toast, and that's launches the assault or something. So think of those rituals associated with, a wedding feast, or as I mentioned before, the harvest feast or something, and think about how you can work those in. You also have religious feasts in the United States. We have Christmas, Easter. There are other religions that have feasts, certainly. That's just the one I'm familiar with, and all across the world. But this is characterized in terms of the invitees as usually those that believe in this religious ceremony or rite. You can have outsiders, certainly at Christmas or Easter's. You can have anyone you want to come, but I don't know about in terms of other ones if it's closed off. But certainly that guest list is typically people who share this religious belief. Conflicts again arise if you have people that are more conservative or liberal in terms of their beliefs. If you have people who live their lives in such a way that those conservative members are like, if I'm not going to that thing, if so-and-so is there, this can be rife because, of course, religion is very important and personal. So in the D&D world, if you have religious rites and there is some non-believer or someone who worships another god or something that they're opposed, for them to come to this event may cause trouble. The etiquette here is also very important. What you're wearing, they talk about offending people. If you're wearing, and again in the D&D world, if you're wearing the crest of some opposing force or opposing god, what you say and how you carry yourself and remarks that you made, anyone who talks disparagingly of this religion is going to get in big trouble. And in D&D, the gods are very active and real, and in terms of ceremonies and rites that are associated with a religious feast, if those rites are not carried out, or if they're interrupted by an opposing force, this can cause the god, to become angry, or just the celebrants become angry. So this can be, or, if you have a feast in the D&D world of an evil cult, they have a feast and the players go there disguised as members of this religious order in order to stop something from happening. This is a tremendous adventure hook. And a feast provides an opportunity for disguise, for stealth, to sort of sneak in and pretend to be someone else to stop some rite, because they're all going to be gathered in a crowd, and crowds you can slip in and out of easily. And of course, we have many, many ceremonies and rituals associated with religious feasts. Oftentimes these occur, before, if you're going to a church or synagogue or something with a religious feast, and then gathering together at someone's home. But again, there might be, rituals that occur that are, absolutely dedicated to this feast. Another classic is the victory feast. This could be after a big battle. This can also be to celebrate some great victory that happened, that shifted empires or whatever. And a victory feast, let's say in a sort of medieval setting, the classic setting, you have activities associated with this. You have tournaments and jousts, contests of skill, whatever, that the king oversees. And again, when you have these things with a victory feast, you have these contests, you have toasts, but you also have a potential here for warring parties that are coming together for this victory feast. This is something culture-wide, but you have warring houses or groups. The houses of different giants get together to celebrate some giant victory, let's say over trolls or something, some battle. But there's an uneasy festival. Maybe there have been disputes growing among the giants or whatever, and they're going to either use this opportunity to have an attack, but also when they have these contests, these feats of strength or boulder throws or anything that you can think of that would be typical for this kind of festival, suddenly things boil up. And the players, maybe they've done something with these giants, maybe they're just in their lands and they're invited to this feast, they may get involved in this. Another general etiquette rule with feast is you must eat the food. And this can be really important cross-culturally in the real world, but also in terms of fantastic sentient monsters or whatever. It is very impolite not to eat what's given to you. These people have prepared this food. It may be a tremendous sacrifice to them. You have to eat it. So the gag potential here, when they go to the lizard folk feast and they're serving up, live eels or something like that, and the players have to eat this. Just kind of a little gag. All right, another classic feast is the wake after someone dies. They have a ceremony obviously associated with that, but then they gather for a feast. And this is usually something where it's not festive, but people are gathered to show their respect to the surviving family members. They talk about the person always with honor. There's etiquette there. There's etiquette in terms of, here again, you should be dressed appropriately for a wake. And you should not make disparaging remarks about the person who just died or any other kind of thing. But again, family disputes at a wake. If you have a royal family, there may be issues of succession. There may be issues in terms of who gets what loot in the family, you know, the will type thing. This can be fraught. This can be another gathering thing where rival people, you think about the classic, in the movies at least, the mafia funeral where the warring families get together. It's supposed to be neutral ground, but oftentimes there's all sorts of intrigue going on behind the scenes. There can also be attacks, although again, the etiquette there, you know, attacking someone at a wake is super taboo. And the final thing that I will say about this is think about some of the more interesting races. What sort of festivals would minotaurs have? You know, would they have maze contests or something? Or tabaxi, these are the cat creatures, or, you know, and again, they talk about orcs and hobgoblins and everything. And you can take these feasts of some of the ones, they have weddings, they have wakes, they celebrate the, you know, harvest festivals. You can take these and adapt these. And then what you do is the players, if you have a orc player character, or a half orc or something, or hobgoblin, depending on what you allow in your campaign, that would be an entree to these kind of feasts. But also just think about when your players are interacting, because one of the things I think in terms of some of the more modern ideas about alignment is there might be orcs or hobgoblins or whatever in your world that we kind of traditionally think of, at least in the old days, as, you know, evil or always opposed to the player races, but that's not the case in the modern game, right? And so adapting those feasts, it lends verisimilitude to your world. It makes it seem real that these people, or these sentient creatures, are actually living in a world and interacting with it. But it also gives you opportunities for all the intrigue, all the attacks. Again, the players learn about something's going to happen at this feast. They're either not believed or they can't reveal it until they figure out exactly who's doing this. And so they have to come in and they have to try to stop this. And then you have all the role-playing potential, depending on the level of role-play that you do in your world during the feast. Talking, you know, to different people, figuring things out. You know, the king, and meeting the king, and you're showing up at the king's wedding feast. Now you're somewhat associate with him or her, or, you know, the queen or whoever it is that's ruling this place. And then that can provide an entree to more advanced adventure hooks in your world. So hopefully that was helpful. As I say, this is kind of a late edition video because I was so busy this weekend with my own feast that I was hosting. If you like my channel, please subscribe. I'm always looking for more. Please leave some comments. I'd love to hear them and answer them. And of course, you know, between the feasts of your own personal life, keep playing D&D and tell somebody else about it.